In this video, I would like to build upon the previous lectures we did about how to create layered materials, for example, here with the wood, and really go into detail and try to replicate all the realistic effects we see in real life. Let me go to my texture folder. I have here this one image that shows kind of like a wood surface where they have different layers of veneer attached to each other. And this one, of course, we use for the diffuse, so the color. Here's also a black and white one, which we can use for like the bump map if we want to have like more coarse bump. And also here I have some specular maps, which basically can be used to define where something will be reflective and, for example, where something will not be reflective. And you see here already I'm dealing at least with 3 images, and you can always go to Photoshop, adjust those images, then go back to rendering, try it out. And I think that's a lot of forward and backwards. And fortunately, Blender has all the commands we do inside Photoshop simply built in. So I'm going to open my node editor. And let me actually add an area light, simply so I see something for reflectivity, maybe a meter big. Move this one maybe to there, rotate, turn this one on. I think 5 will be okay. Let's take a look at how this renders. Oh, I still have my volt on, so set this to 0 artificially on purpose, and maybe 10. Let's see. Ooh, 20, or maybe 2 meters. 50. Yeah, okay, good. That's getting somewhere to where I need it to be. Maybe 80. And to the side. Yeah. Okay, so what we see here is simply the diffuse color. So I have my material output, I have my texture image, I have my diffuse. You see for the vector I don't define actually the mapping because I don't really need to do it there. I can simply in UV editor rotate my mesh to have the orientation, and I don't need any tiling, so all this texture coordinates and then mapping I can ignore in this case. Now let's at first maybe take a look at actually how we can create the bump map. And I would like to do this out of my textured image. So I want only to have one image I work with and then create a chain of processing commands that will basically do the same steps I do in Photoshop with desaturating an image and then clamping the levels. So I get this nice black and white image. Okay, so let's move this one to here. And first I would like to convert this image into black and white. So I go to convert RGB to black and white, which is basically like desaturate. And let's see inside color or what commands we have here. For example, we can work with brightness and contrast. So let's see what happens if we lower the contrast or increase the contrast. Interesting. What happens when we change the brightness or contrast? Oh, look at that. So it's just kind of like a color adjustment that way. And you see I'm driving this one through the diffuse simply because this way I can preview how this texture will look like, because unfortunately currently here I do not have a preview what this would do to this texture. So I have to turn on the rendering, but it's not a really big deal. In Photoshop I would simply see that inside the image. So I can use that, for example, now to plug this one into the displacement. And then there we see this bump effect. Now it basically uses the black and white to move or it doesn't actually really move, but it uses the black and white, so pure white and pure black are opposite on the scale to create this illusion of highlights and shadows. And to lower the effect, so to control how strong this displacement can work, that's the reason why in between I add a math node. Now this seems to be a really odd concept, but think about it simply as a multiplier in terms of I have my image, make this grayscale, I adjust the color, and if I have set this one to 1, I use 100% of this outcome for my displacement. If I set this one to 0, I use 0%. So basically I say don't use this effect. Think about this multiplier with 0 to 1, kind of like in Photoshop when you have a layer and you do the transparency. You can say, well, make it 100% transparent, 50% transparent. So basically you're kind of like adjusting this through a slider, and we do really the same here. So if I type in 0.1, then I'm using 10%. So a different way to visualize this, take a look at this. There you can see actually how it slightly increases the way how this image looks. And then this is exactly equal this, no difference. But all I want just a little bit here. So zip. And there now you see a really fine grid. But maybe I have a little bit too much of like the grain. Maybe I want only the stronger parts to look through. So let's see if maybe we can clamp this a little bit more. Bring this one up a little bit more. Let's see how this works. And not really that much. Okay. And you know, there are a lot of ways how you can do this. It's really based on your preference with the gamma. Let's see what we can do there. So we even, as you can see, black, like have a stronger contrast, but now I have like very, this effect. I don't really like it. Oh, whoops, get this one out. Or maybe 0.001. Yeah, I see it gets to somewhere else. That might be good, but that's kind of like not really what I'm looking for. So let's delete all this. 0.1. And hold on, actually put this one back to there. And then let's try to maybe see what we can do with the gamma. So you see that's kind of like the way how it works, but I don't really have much control. So the tool I use a lot is simply the RGB curves, which are kind of like if you think about the gradation curves in Photoshop, or maybe levels. So when I move this one down, you see, okay, darken everything. If I move this one to there, I make everything brighter. Let's say at this point I move to here, I make everything black. There, everything gets white. So think about this one basically as white point and the black point. And like with the level and the histogram, if I move those further, now I say kind of like everything that's mid-gray should be black. Whoa, nope. Be careful, like not clicking onto the line, and then there. So, you know, I'm clamping this even further. So there we can play a little bit. Oh, look at that. I don't know why we do this one maybe here. Nope. It's maybe there. Take a look. This could maybe be interesting. So basically what I did now is from this point horizontally to this point, I have a transition from black to white. So I don't really have like smooth gradients, really stark contrast. And that's actually what I'm looking for my bump mapping. So let's see. That's too much there. Maybe 0.005. Yeah, okay. You can see when I move this one around. So you see I can get similar results based on what you have and how strongly. What happens if we actually inverse it? Oh, and then we change the direction of the displacement. No, the grooves come up rather down. So you see this one actually looks basically black, but it is really, there is still a little bit of color information left. And that is what the bump map actually is going to use. So there you kind of like see that effect. We can also maybe try and take a look what happens if we do it this way. Yeah, thank you. Not interested right now. This is too high. Maybe this way. There. See? That looks not too bad. So a small kind of like mix of histogram, like adjusting the histogram or setting white point and black point basically, and then a little bit of gradation curves. Because basically what I'm trying to do here, let's go back to there. Let's see, get a little bit of more white and more black areas. There. Okay. Let's maybe leave this one for the moment kind of like at this. And basically what I'm doing here is really very subjective. So you can play with this indefinitely, and also based on whatever texture you're using, the results can be, or the curve or whatever you do can or has to be different. Okay, so that's, for example, a quick way how to create this bump map. And then if I plug this image map back into my diffuse but without desaturating it, now you see I have basically the same texture, and I'm using the color version to color my diffuse material, and I use the grayscale one to drive my displacement. So this actually worked really well. Now let's make this a little bit more interesting. Let's plug in our mix shader, and let's plug in our glossy shader. Then actually you will see this bump effect even more. And let's go maybe with the easy one, simply the Fresnel. Let's rotate the view a little bit. Okay. And there we see that bump effect is way too strong. Just a little bit. Some grooves. That's all I want. It's still too big. Also, when your texture is too big, your scratches will look too big. Either you have then to lower that effect, like what I'm doing here right now, or get a texture with more pixels in it. Maybe 0.05, a little bit of blurriness, too much 0.01. Yeah, okay, nice. So, however, most wood things don't really look that way. There's a little bit of variation, specifically when you have wood floors or something, or if you have areas that are scratched off. Also, different parts of wood can, for example, soak up varnish or something differently. Also, certain parts of the wood is harder and softer, so when you sand it, the effects will be different. And that is why, for example, we have something that's called a specular map. So let me move this one up to there. And what I have to do now is basically do something similar like what I did with my bump map and create, think about Photoshop and layer masks, create kind of like a mask that can blend between diffuse and glossy. And this is now a little bit maybe abstract. So all this maybe I move down to here. Zip. Actually, this one I keep to there, there, there. Maybe I move this one to here. I'm German, I like order. And my first problem I have right now is I have my glossy and my diffuse, and these two I blend together into a new material, and I use the Fresnel to affect how, for example, where something should be reflected. So what I rather want is actually have my glossy material be mixed by a specular map, so it's not everywhere perfectly reflective, and then that result I would like to mix with the diffuse and then have this mix shader. Mix basically the glossy result with the diffuse material. So to do this is going to be my last part, because that's my base. This one I move to here, Shift D, make a copy, move this one in between, there. Maybe move this one down. So there you see now if I set this to 0, there's no material attached, which actually will result, think about something transparent. So nothing transparent mixed with the diffuse, which is why you only see diffuse. If I set this to 1, it's 100% transparent. It's 100% glossy, so diffused and glossy mixed together. Actually, this way is also one way if you want to, for example, tone down. You see the strength of a reflection. You can do it that way. Or actually, that's maybe another case to demonstrate this multiply. I patch this multiply in between here. So I mix diffuse and glossy by using the Fresnel function at 0%, 50% normal result. So you see this one will be equal this one, or maybe 25%. So you see even this way I can tone down the reflection. And sometimes you have to do this, something like this, because in real life you have to move your camera and reflective surfaces and surfaces you reflect in a way so that you do not get distracting reflections. And fortunately in digital rendering we can trick around a lot. So if the reflection is too strong for my shot, I simply tone it down a little bit so it's not distracting. Okay. So you see this multiply is, really think about it kind of like as a node that can be used to specify how much an effect is being applied from 0 to 100%. We can also set this to 3, so 300%, so we can artificially overblow it. Okay, so let's keep this then, and what I have to do now is I'm going to do this and simply create myself an alternative material to look at. So you see click and click, that's really nice. And then I make another RGB, zip, put this one in there, zip, zip. And maybe let's play with those curves a little bit. See maybe what we can do. And so there you see kind of like the end result of this color operation. So this black and white I'm going to use as my, think about it, layer mask in Photoshop to put in there. And to best see the reflection strength, I'm going to disconnect my diffuse material. So I only see black because there's nothing in here for the base, and this reflectivity. So all this stuff, what you see is a reflection of my light source, because currently my whole object is reflective. And then there you can nicely see what, for example, will be reflective, what is not reflective. So now there you see lots of reflectivity. So what's really reflective? Everything that's white, and when it's really dark, so black, then there's less reflectivity. So that basically means if I maybe make myself an image like, whoops, like this. So again, white reflective, black not reflective. And there you see the reflective stuff. So that means if here I really create like a nice clamped result like this, and then I put this one back, there you see now kind of like the grooves don't really have any reflectivity, just the top surfaces of my object are reflective. And if you pay close attention to real life, that is kind of like the effect you're also seeing specifically on wood floors. Now this texture actually has pretty big grooves, which is why maybe this effect is difficult to really get well with this texture. So let's see how this one looks here right now. Maybe move this one over a little bit. Ooh. No. This is maybe better. Yeah. Yep. So I'm just trying to find kind of like a setting where I still have some of these grooves, but it's more minimized. Actually curious, what happens if we do it simply this way? Okay, let's go down. Yeah, nope. Yeah, maybe let's keep it that way. That seems to be nice. And also, so what happens if we plug in a multiply function here? You see if I set this to 0, again this effect is set 0%, 100%, 200%, 400%, 1000, and it, whoa. Let's go to here and let's set this back to 1. You see there's a little bit more of play, gradation. And with 2, this becomes really more and more like a line art image, black and white. But I don't really want this. But I just put this one in there so you can see how universal actually this math node can be used. Okay, so I hope that this actually somewhat explained a little bit this process of making yourself a black and white image and then changing the let's say the brightness and contrast, if you want to say it this way. So you can drive your bump map and you can drive your specular map. And you see the workflow is pretty much the same. To adjust my reflectivity, the Fresnel effect, I use the multiply. To adjust my displacement, I use the multiply. And the only difference is basically this, together with this one, generates with this alpha map, if you want to say it this way, one result of a reflective surface, and that then is mixed together with my diffuse. That's the reason why I need two mix shaders. Because I think, hold on, actually, let's try this one out. And this one, zip. Let's rotate the view a little bit. Yeah, well, actually, we can or could do it, but no, I can't really lower that effect. What actually, if I plug another one in between, 0.25. Yeah, yeah, I could do it maybe this way as well. But actually, like my previous approach more. So here I have more clean control over the Fresnel effect. And then this way here I have more control over my reflective element. So if I really want to fine tune this one, now I never really dealt with the issue of certain wood parts are being more harder and softer. So I actually also need an image for the roughness. Currently I set this one to be kind of like uniform. So I'm going to do this. So another RGB curve. Zip, zip. Let's see what's the outcome. Maybe a little bit darker. Maybe a little bit more of that one. There. Maybe this. Or this. Let's see. No, I think more this. Okay, and let's see how this one now works when we plug this one actually into the glossy. Let's zoom in, and for the moment I'm removing this one, so I do not mix those parts out. And take a look at the nice effect we have. You can see actually that this black and white image is actually defining what part of the surface is rough and what, for example, is more smooth. And even here, again, when we start clamping it, you get this really nice result. And if I zoom in a little bit more, there you can see that the reflections here are good and clean, and here they're kind of grainy. And that simulates this idea of that maybe in those grooves, you couldn't really get down with your sandpaper and perfectly polish it. So it does not necessarily look like bumps, but it's more really dealing with the reflectivity. And currently, maybe this is a little bit too strong. Let's take a look at this. So there. And what happens if we move this one over? Ooh, maybe a little bit too much. Oh, let's see. Yeah. Also, let's remove the bump effect for the moment, so I can easily see the effect. Whoops. Yeah, so you have to be really touchy with, very careful with moving these points. The interface is a little bit touchy, but yeah. So there we don't want to clamp it too much. Of course not that way, that's too far. Yeah. What happens if we do this? A little bit more gradation or a little bit less. Okay, let's plug back our bump effect. See, it somewhat overlays actually, more or less. 0.1, let's see, there, and zip. 0.025. And let's plug back in this one. And so this was for the reflectivity, the roughness. This is for what to clip. Now the problem here might be I'm actually cutting all the stuff out. I carefully created here. So I might have to tone this a little bit. So I can make use of my multiplier here. So 0. Okay. That's interesting. And 1 and 2, 4. Okay, good. Yep. So what I have to do here is simply the following. So this is really white and black. This can't really be black. This has to be a little bit brighter. So like a medium gray or something. And let's see if maybe with the brightness and contrast, if I can adjust this. So let's see, brightness. See there, it works. Or contrast. Let's see. Oh, that makes it blacker. Yeah, so I have to use the, I think the brightness I can use for that. Maybe 0.8. Okay, so let's try this one out. And compare, there you can see that already. Now it's not so stark anymore. What if we increase this one, take more, so still a little bit there, there, and there, and there is now a really nice wood material. I hope that this actually maybe gave you a good idea now how modular really the system is. It doesn't really matter how you do it. All these parts can be combined. And everything I'm doing here is really the same like going into Photoshop and then creating all these images one by one. But my big advantage through the way in Blender is it's completely interactive, and I just only have one image, and then I drive all those effects based on it. So I don't have to always go forward and backwards and then even deal with multiple images. Here I just have only one texture input, and then I generate whatever data I actually need. And one might say, well, you know, this stuff is really very confusing, and that's purposely confusing because it might just simply be new or you might not be familiar with it. But this is a very logical system. All the building blocks like diffuse, glossy, and textures, and the mixing shaders, the multipliers, are as repetitive elements. And you just have to spend a little bit of time with it to get familiar with this concept. A lot of other programs use exactly the same process as well to go away from like a menu or dialogue approach of how to give you access to those things and represent it more like in a node or simply as a flowchart, because here really I see how I'm driving all my different functions to create a material. Because if I go back to Fusion, for example, here I have a screenshot of all the different dialogues I have to click through, and if I'm inside the For example, the diffuse one, that's for diffuse color. Then I see all this. If I then go to edit for reflectance, so that's the glossy map, then I only see this dialog. If I then go to bump, I only see the bump dialog. So the amount of information that is instantly available to me is very limited through an interface kind of like here. And it's not that the one what Fusion is using is bad. It's just simply the ups and downs of those different visual approaches, how you present the information for your materials. And also here you see there are so many settings, you just have to dig through them, understand what they're doing. At the beginning also I had no clue what to do here, and I needed to spend an afternoon to familiarize myself with it. And the same pretty much will be in Blender. And again, I simply use this one mainly for final renderings because I simply ultimately have for $0 render results that outperform quite expensive products as well, or at least are equal. And the software is incredibly powerful, so I can really have full control over my product renderings for my portfolio or client or however you're going to use it.